Well, welcome to God Talk. I'm Pastor Dan, and I'm just blessed by LLBN to have this show. If you've been with me for the last few weeks, you know that I have officially retired from 45 years of pastoring. Still Pastor Dan, still have got meetings overseas coming and preaching for camp meetings and at LLBN. Happy to be here, happy to do God Talk, and glad you're with us today. I've been thinking about what the biggest changes have been in my life as I have bracketed now 66 years, 45 years of pastoring. Probably texting. Someone thought texting is a pretty big change. I grew up overseas. We didn't have any connection to anybody. I didn't have telephone most of the time. We couldn't write, we couldn't email, couldn't text. There was no connection back home. Now you can text all over the world. I heard a story the other day. People were on a ship. A guy was texting his friend, hey, you ready to go to dinner? Yeah, I'm ready to go. So they started going. We're standing next to each other in the hallway outside the dining room, texting each other to communicate. Too bad. I was talking to one of my youth here a while ago, and all the youth were going to go down to the beach Saturday, Sabbath afternoon. And he wasn't going to go. I said, what are you going to do better than going to the beach? He said, I'll just go home. What are you going to do there? Text the people at the beach? People texting. Sitting on the bench, just texting. We live in our houses with fences, and nobody sits on their front porch and engage with their neighbors. We are sealed off. Me too. I live 30-some miles from my church. I'm gone most of the time. Don't really know my neighbors except our professor across the street. But if you read the book of Romans, you come to the end of the book of Romans, and here it has this list of people. My first Sabbath at Garden Grove, when I first went 9.5 years ago, that's what I preached on, Romans 16. Paul says he's going to go to Rome. He doesn't know if he's going to make it. Will he die there? So he says greeting, but he really is saying goodbye. He said, greet so-and-so. We did church together back there. And greet so-and-so. They were my first baptism over here. Greet that one. We were shipwrecked together before. These people brought food for me at the jail, when I was in prison. These are the people that have done life with him and done church with him. If Paul was here, he would say, don't you dare call that a list. Most people just look at the list. People don't even keep reading. I took a Romans class that stopped at Romans 8, maybe Romans 12. Many of us believe Romans 16 is the whole point of the book. Church of people from all over different walks of life. There's all kinds of families there, old and young, slave and free. Mother and son, different families, two twins. Romans 16. Group of people done life together. I just said goodbye recently to my church. People we've done life together. Not easy. We have a book full of pictures now. Someone took months to prepare. Your gift to us. Coffee table book. Other books like that were given from the library where my wife worked. A group of people that do life with each other, connected, open. I was in the Philippines a few weeks ago preaching, and a group of people said, Pastor Dan, we're going to all come together. That one and that one. Met with me in a restaurant looking over a lake. Sweet time. Done week of prayer with him, done crusade evangelism with him, done life together. 20 years. What does it feel like to be connected? We're all looking for a few people who really know each other, connected to each other. I was reading about this whole theme of intimacy and belonging and connected. Talked about a lady who went to a restaurant, and she ordered a soup, and the soup came supposed to be hot, and it came cold. Called for a lady to come over, the waitress, and say, "I'm so sorry, but this soup is cold. Could you heat it up?" And the lady just was so good, just said, "Oh, that's terrible. Everyone hates this cold soup. No one should have to eat cold soup. I'll heat it up for you." And this lady just said, it just felt so good to have someone say, "I get it. I feel how you feel." Instead of being someone who just says, the same for everybody. I don't have time to deal with it. Just eat it. I was in Chicago years ago pastoring. Chinese lady came to this city meeting, kind of a Chamber of Commerce type meeting, I think, not a church meeting. This lady talked about what it likes to communicate thick or thin. You can say something thin, my name, I'm Dan Smith. You can say maybe a little more. You can say, "Hey, how'd the Lakers do last night? Is it going to rain today?" It's all shallow, it's surface, doesn't have any heart, soul. You don't get to know the person thick at all, just thin. Thin. I did a funeral one time. I did not know the family. They needed a pastor, and somehow I ended up being the one. So I drove to their home, got out my little pad and said, "Tell me about him so I can shape the sermon and message over towards him and your family." Someone said, "Well, he was a golfer. He really liked golf." "Well, I played golf." "Okay, good. Wrote that down. Likes golf." I said, "What else?" "Boy, really liked golf." I said, "Okay, good. Kind of got that." It's all they ever came up with. After 40, 50 years with this man in their life, they could not think of a single other thing to identify, connect with him, except that he liked golf. They hated him, their husband and their father, and they hated him for who he was. Too bad. Thin, really thin. Or you can do thick. I came to the end of 45 years of pastoring. I went in and signed papers ending my life work. 45 years ago, as a young pastor at 21 years old, I drove from Northern California all the way to Portland, Oregon. I had a call to go to the Oregon conference. I got a letter from stationery with Mount Hood at the top saying, "Oregon Conference. Dear Dan Smith, we are pleased and honored to give you an official call to become a pastor at the Oregon Conference." And I came up Highway 5 and I turned over to go over towards where the campground was in Gladstone, Oregon. And there was Mount Hood. You don't always get to see Mount Hood. Often it is covered with clouds. But my first day in Oregon at 21 years old, I got to see Mount Hood as it was. I said, "This is going to be great." I get to be a pastor, and I get to do it in Oregon with this Mount Hood and the trees, and skied up there many times, camped up there. And now I signed papers to come to the end. 45 years. You see, it's a little thicker. Now you know something about me and my heart and what I'm feeling the last few days and weeks. You can live life thin, or you can live life thick. Don't be afraid to dig a little deeper. People come to my wife and they'll ask her, "What do you do?" "Well, I'm a librarian." And some people go right to the next subject or the next person in line. Boy, but the people that my wife cherishes are the ones who will go one more level. "What kind of librarian?" "I'm a reference librarian." "Where do you do it?" "La Sierra University." "How do you like it?" "What do you do with the kids?" "How do you learn the whole library system?" And just begin to talk to her and explore what it means to be a librarian. To have kids walk in who have no idea what to do for their paper, And an hour later, they're thanking you because now they have hope, they have light at the end of the tunnel. They know a topic, they fine-tuned it, they've got papers, they've got books, they've got some resources. And at the end, they come back and say, I got an A on your paper. And now you know some more in a relationship. I was with my young associate pastor one time who had had a rocky time as a young person, drugs and whatnot, and came to Jesus. Now he's a pastor. We had dinner with his parents, not Adventists, and we're having dinner together. And I said, what was it like to have your son go off into drugs? My wife kicked me under the table, meaning too sensitive. Stay out of that. Stay thin. But I wanted to know. I thought I could make this work. They were happy to talk about it. You have a dream for your son, and now he's going against your dream and what it was like. And then as he found his way back to God. We had a great conversation. It was depth, thick. There's a time for thin. Yes, there is. Pass the butter. But life is best when you have people who are thick with you, who share from their heart and their soul. My Uncle Maury Venden, before he passed, great preacher. I still remember a talk he gave at my college. He was a pastor at the Pacific Union College, and I was down here at last year. And he came up to talk us at PUC. And a group of us were in the room, and he said, you know, you can talk to people mouth to mouth. Thin. Pass the butter. Going to rain today. You see the Dodgers won last night? Like that. Or you can go to, he said, mind to mind. People who you engage with mentally. And maybe you'll talk about what you read in the newspaper today. And what you think about what Trump said yesterday. And what, and you're engaged mind to mind. Maybe even talk about theology and God. And it's got more depth to it, but it's mind to mind. And that's great. I have great friends, mind to mind. But he said, somewhere in your life you have to have some people that it's heart to heart. It moves from the surface and the shallow to heart, where you expose yourself. You talk about how you feel about some things. And I never forget how he told a story. How he had come to college as the younger brother of his older brother, Lou Venden, pastor here at Loma Linda for many years, is in a facility down just a few minutes away here. And my uncle, my mother's first cousin. Maury was the new kid coming in as a younger brother. Brother been there a year or two, maybe 2 years already. And Lou was already an established star last year at college back then, not a huge school back then. And he is afraid because he's the little brother. No identity, no history with his brother. Sure, everyone is watching to see what the little brother will be like. Goes into the cafeteria. Sure, all eyes are on him. He's going through line slowly. Doesn't want to face the crowd. Finally comes the time. Can't push it off any longer. Turn your... And no one's looking at you. What your fears were unfounded. And you are not such a big item after all. It's a story. And out of that story, you feel, okay, we've all felt that. When we were afraid or we thought we were somebody and then find out no one's talking about you after all. Thick. Henry Cloud, who wrote this book and this chapter about intimacy. Henry Cloud talked about when he was 11 years old and he just couldn't face going to school one day. Too much drama, friends fighting, I don't know what all the issues were. But this day was more than he could bear of going to school. And when Mom came in and said, Henry, we got to go to school. I just can't, Mom. I just can't go today. Mother could have yelled, mother could have whatever. came over and put her arm around him. So I know, son. There are days when it's just hard. I understand. And there are days that I don't want to go. And I don't want to go to work, and I just want to stay home, and I don't feel good, or I don't want to go. But you still go, Mom? Yeah, I still go. And somehow, the little boy could go now, because Mom had shared a story. Me too. Me too. Why don't we do it more? Why do we just stick to the shallow and the thin? Happy Sabbath. How you doing? Have a good day. Thanks. Great for the sunshine. Shallow. When there's so much more we could do. It's really the strong people who are able to share and say, let me reveal a little more, be a little vulnerable. Who can say, I can tell you this and I'm not afraid because I know who I am and I know who my friends are and I know my place. And I can reveal some part of me that's maybe not so great. People who can make fun of themselves, people who can reveal. My favorite story about this was a kid in Seattle. And somehow he had won a sportsmanship award because he had called himself out at second base. He was safe by the umpire, but he knew he was out. And he said, no, I was out. Walked off the field. Someone heard about it, turned it in, and they got a story and he got an award. They flew him to Pittsburgh because there was going to be a competition of nationwide sportsmanship stories. So someone interviewed him, and they said, hey, was that hard? You're 9 years old, and they call you safe, and you call yourself out. He said, no, really wasn't that hard. We were ahead 21-1. When we're feeling full and good, then easy to give away a one run. Who cares? What if it had been 1-1? And this is to win the game. What if they were behind 1? And if he didn't score, they were going to lose. Would he have been so generous? It's the strong people who can care and show concern and be revealing and be intimate with people. We're ahead. We are ahead 21-1. We know God. We're going to heaven. We have had our sins forgiven. I've got friends all over the world who love me as I am, even with some flaws and some mistakes. And I can be a little more revealing with people because I am not going to be destroyed over this little story that I'm going to share with you. We're ahead 21-1 in Jesus. We know God. Just wanted to underline this before we talk about God a little more. The power of having relationships where we are more open. I have had people come to me, and they'll say, how are you, Dan? Really? They're not going to accept the thin answers. I'm okay, I'm fine. How are you? Really? Well, this elder's mad at me, and this is here. Oh. And you feel connected because someone listened to you, cared about you, and you revealed a little more. Self-disclosure. Keith Miller tells a story. One of my great writers in my life was Keith Miller, wrote Taste of New Wine and Edge of Adventure, some other great books that really helped me in my growing up, early 20s, young pastor. I forget which book he tells a story about wanting to be more open with his own family, with his kids. So one night he was upstairs putting a little girl to bed, and he decided to apologize for something in the prayer. So he said, God, forgive me for hogging the whole show from Mommy last night. Mommy was telling a story, and I took over the story from her, and I finished the story for her. And I got all the jokes and the laughing. And that wasn't nice of me, and I shouldn't have done that, and I'm sorry. please forgive me. Finish his prayer. So I'd put the little girl in bed, the little girl. And Jesus, forgive me for when I went and peed in the backyard last summer. Something about him being open and revealing to God set that little girl, said, now she feels safe to bring up a story that nobody else knew anything about. And when we model openness and thickness, we can then get a reciprocal back because we have modeled it, and now we have a relationship where we're going heart to heart because we modeled it. And you can connect deeply with people. I was in Chicago pastoring, went out to see someone at their house. And as I came around the corner of the van, the lady that I was coming to visit just started swearing out, oh, blankety blank blank. It turns out that somehow somebody had left a whole case of root beer in the van. And they'd forgotten about it, and in the heat it had exploded. And back in the day, they had the shag carpet all over that van, and that root beer had exploded in foam all over the shag carpet. And when she saw that, out came some bad words. And the husband, who really wasn't much in the church, he looked over and saw me, and he said, honey, the pastor's here. And she knew that I had just heard those stories. But that Sabbath, I told a story. I had come to church. I got into my office, several offices. Here's mine, the first one, senior pastor. And on my desk, big box, was a box that really had nothing to do with me. Some printing press had sent this stuff for us to pass out. Office should have handled it. Secretary should have handled it. Not my role is to take care of that. Just because my name is on the front of it. They should have known that. And I got that box, and I took it down the hallway, and I got a little irritated, and I said, this is really not my deal. When these kind of things come, you need to open this up and just take care of it. I'm too busy to deal with boxes of stuff like this. And then I was sick. And I had to apologize. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. So I told that story in church about the pastor who was very human. And people came up to me afterward and they said, Pastor Dan, you have no idea what that meant to us. To know that you get angry too, and that you're human too, and that you have to apologize, and you have to make things right. You can think how that lady felt after she just swore in front of pastor. And then to hear me say, me too. Me too. And you're connected. Because you shared a story together. You can talk about intimacy, you talk about having a connection, whatever word you want to use. And as I wrap up 45 years of being a pastor with people, connected to people, I don't think, first of all, about the buildings that I've helped build in churches or around the world, or numbers of baptisms, or dollars we've raised, or church budgets, or whatever else. It's about the people. The meals where we shared and talked, and loved and struggled, and made up, and whatever else. The people. The heart-to-heart. The heart-to-heart people. Not the mouth-to-mouth people. Shake hands. How you doing? Thank you. Good sermon, Pastor Dan. It's the heart-to-heart people that stick out, that you cherish, you had a connection with. What makes church, church. But now we got to tie this to God. The Bible says we have a God who is an us, who is a holy trinity. Let us make man in our image. There's an us. Somewhere in this holy trinity, before there was any other being, there was love inside that one God. There was complexity as God loved. And he says, let us make this world. Makes man in his own image so he can have a relationship. And he makes a Sabbath so we can have a day to be with God. And he hungers to have a deep heart-to-heart relationship with us. He made us with a heart and a mind. Not just mouth to mouth. He says, I'm knocking at the door so I can come in and eat with you and you with me have a relationship. If you will search for me with all your heart, I will be found by you. He speaks to 15,000 people. But then he takes 3 to the top of a mountain, Peter, James, and John. Before he dies, he said, would you pray with me? He wants to have a supper with 12. He has a house where he goes where there's Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. Heart to heart. That's who he wants. He goes to every party. He has the Last Supper with this people. And then he says, I'm going to go prepare a place for you. Where I am, there ye may be also. He wants to be with us forever. Intimacy. You can do life thin. You can go to church every week. You can sit there and stand up and sit down and sing the songs and do the words and say happy Sabbath to people. And you can do life thin with God. Or you can have a relationship. And Jesus and Bible says, Jeremiah 9, 23 and 24. Don't boast, and let the wise man not boast in his wisdom, or the rich man boast in his money, or the strong man boast in his strength. Let you boast in this, that you know God, that you know me, and you know and understand me, that we have this relationship with God. I had a little girl talk to me the other day, mad because God wasn't answering any of her prayers. In the back of a bus in Vietnam, we talked about it, and I said, if you had a boy invite you out to dinner, or let's say go get ice cream, $3 and he buys you ice cream. Oh, you like that? So tomorrow he says, let's go again. And for 50 days in a row, he buys you ice cream and you love it. But then the boy takes the last day, he says, I don't have any money today. I'm going to get paid on Friday. Is it okay if we just take a walk in the park? And the girl says, no ice cream today? Yeah, no ice cream. I don't have any money. Okay, well, just forget it. And she walks away. How would the boy feel when he knew that she only wanted him for the ice cream, not for him? That's how God feels. If we only want him for the blessings and the magic and the miracles and the answers to prayer, no. God says, I want you to be with me. I'll do the other, yes. A God who wants heart to heart with us. May it be so. This is God Talk. Be with us again next week. God bless you all.